Welcome back, Proppers. For today's project, we'll be creating Gollum from the Lord of the Rings series. I'll start by using 10mm EVA foam dowels to create the legs and the arms. After cutting the dowels down to an estimated length, I used some aluminum wire to insert down the center so I'll be able to manipulate them into any shape or form that I need. On the first attempt, I sharpened the ends of the wire and tried to insert them directly down the length of the dowels. After finding it increasingly difficult to keep the wire centered down the dowels and not protruding to the sides, I decided to take the quicker route of splitting the dowels. After splitting the dowels, I placed the wire in the approximate center and then reseal it with contact cement. I set the legs and arms aside and got started on the body, so I have to break out my new supply of Steve K's HD foam. You can order this great product directly off of his channel, SKS Props, or through Blick Art Supplies. I start by marking and cutting out the first 2 layers of the body out of 10mm EVA foam. This project, like many of my others, are done on the fly, so you're getting to see the entire process, warts and all. Well, most of the warts, because if I put everything in, this would be a 3-hour video. On one of the 10mm layers, I'm leaving a little bump out near the shoulders so I can attach the arms. As a standard practice, after getting one side cut to my liking, I fold over the foam and create a mirror image for the other side. On the front layer foam, I mark and cut out a circular area on the shoulder to accommodate the arms. The first 2 layers of the body are then attached with contact cement. The edges are smoothed and rounded over with my Dremel rotary tool. Using my drill and a fastener bit, I hollow out 2 circular areas in the front of the foam to insert the foam dowel legs. The legs and arms are then attached to the front of the body with contact cement. The structural aluminum wires inside the dowels are pressed through the back of the body for extra support. The excess wiring is then trimmed off. I do some preliminary bending of the legs to see exactly what form I'd like them to take and how long I'd like them to be. The same process is used to attach the dowels for the arms. For the arms, I pre-trimmed the structural wiring. I do the same preliminary bending of the arms as I did for the legs. The third layer of foam for the back will be 4mm to add depth. This layer will be made slightly smaller than the first two layers. I mark out the form on tracing paper before transferring it onto 4mm EVA foam. That third layer of foam is centered and attached to the back with contact cement. With that done, I get started on creating his feet. I started the feet with 6mm EVA foam and decided I needed to make them a little thicker, so I attached a layer of 4mm foam. After sanding the feet down smooth with my Dremel rotary tool, I trimmed and cut down the legs for attachment. The foam on the leg was trimmed just before the final bend, leaving a 1/2 inch of wire protruding. That 1/2 inch wire is then snaked through the top of the feet 1/4 inch from the back heel. I crafted the hands a couple of times to get just the right size. I wanted them to be grotesquely large, but I didn't want them to get cartoonishly large. I know what I'm working with right now seems like it's still a bit too large, but they're going to be trimmed down a little later. I'll be using 2 layers of 4mm EVA foam for the hands so that I could sandwich in the structural wiring. The structural wire is cut to size and then placed on the center of each digit. The second layer of foam is contact cemented over it to lock it into place. I take great care to make sure the structural wire stayed centered between each digit. After the structural wire is secured in position, I make some preliminary bending of each digit. Just as I figured, I'm going to have to make some more adjustments to the size of these hands. Although I still want them to be slightly oversized. The fingers are also trimmed down in length. The final trimming, shaping, and sizing will be done with my Dremel rotary tool. Be sure to use a mask or respirator when sanding down this type of material. It's not conducive to good health. I also recommend that you work in a well-ventilated area. Although I'm working in a closed shop, I usually have my WEN air filtration unit running. After the final sanding, the hands are then reformed and then prepared for attachment to the arms. The other hand is taken through the same process. I decide to attach the foam clay skin to the hands before attaching them to the arms. This will allow them to dry properly and eliminate the need for repeated adjustments. Foam clay is also used to skin the feet and allow them to dry while I get started on the head. The head will also consist of 3 layers of foam, just like the body, 2 layers of 10mm foam and 1 layer of 4mm foam. The neck is preserved on 1 layer of the 10mm foam of the head and then cut out of the center section of the body so it can be inserted and attached with contact cement. The second layer of 10mm foam is attached to the front of the head and the third layer of 4mm foam attached to the back. At this point I realized that I wanted the face to protrude a little more, so I applied another layer of 4mm foam to the front. I cupped that layer with my fingers to make a little more projection. The entire project is then sanded and smoothed with my Dremel rotary tool in preparation for the foam clay skinning. After applying foam clay to the head and shoulders, I realized that the head is not in the position that I want it to be in. So I inserted another piece of aluminum wire through the head down into the body so that I could flex the head up without doing any damage to the foam connections. After once again having a little trouble penetrating the wire through the head, I utilized a large needle to create a pilot hole. That created a nice smooth path to push through the aluminum wire. With the new structural wire in place, I was able to bend the head back into the position that I wanted. After completing the foam clay skinning to the top section of the body, the foam clay in the hands were dry enough to be attached to the arms. The same process done on the legs. The foam dowel was cut just before the last turn, leaving a ½ inch of the structural wire exposed. The wire is then pressed through the top of the hand, a ¼ inch from the back of the palm. Once again, I used a large stiff needle to create a pilot hole. Instant glue was used to lock the hand in position. And the same process used for the other hand. With all the parts of the body assembled, it was time to skin the entire project with foam clay. I'm not really great at sculpting, so it's a good thing that Gollum doesn't have any real distinguishing body features. After the foam clay had dried and set, it was time to start putting in his facial features. I established a horizon line on the forehead, so at the very least I wouldn't get his eyes crooked. I cut out the shape of the eyes with my X-Acto knife, and instead of pulling out the excess material, I just pressed it into the forehead. I used that same procedure for the mouth opening. I used a small amount of foam clay to cover up the exposed section of his head that I created when I trimmed it down. I also used the foam clay to make his ears a little larger and to give him a little more character. I then created and attached his nose and lips using foam clay. My apologies for the angle of this shot, but here's a better look. At this point, I'm smoothing out the face a bit and adding a little bit of cheek detail. I gave Gollum one coat of gray Plasti Dip, then one coat of white Plasti Dip, then a final coating of Heirloom White spray paint. I rolled up some miniature balls of foam clay to create his eyes. Although I never look for perfection in all of my projects, there are a few spots that I really weren't happy with, so I decided to sand them down. A few spots quickly turned into quite a few spots. Back outside for a fresh coat of Heirloom White. I'm not going to talk you through the painting process because I really have no clue what I'm doing. I'm just trying to get quite a few layers on here to get as close to a natural body tone as I possibly can, with as much detail as I possibly can. But as I said, I'm no painter. I'm so bad that I'm starting to get threatening calls about my painting. Now, I want none of you to worry now. I had a full investigation done, and I found out that the calls were coming from inside the house. Yes, inside the house. After further investigation, it's clear that I must have been sleep dialing myself and leaving threatening messages. I knew that story about people being their own worst critic, but I think I've taken it to a new level. Nah, that's not true. The fact is, I'm just trying to distract you from this horrible job that I'm doing. But it's going to turn out fairly well in the end. It's not going to be a Rembrandt or the Statue of David, but I think it's going to turn out fairly well. I'm not going to tell you the amount of layers that I put on this guy before I was just half satisfied with the results, because it was astronomical. Let's just put it this way. I'm going to have to order some new paint here. Most of this acrylic here, I wasn't happy with when I got it. I've gotten like 3 or 4 different paint sets that I wasn't happy with. Finally, I settled on the Liquitex, which really works really good, but it's kind of expensive. So I bought quite a few tubes, and let's hope that in the future I can get a full set. Okay, but enough of that stalling. Right now I'm using a piece of 2mm EVA foam so I can create his loincloth. I'm not finished with the touch-up paint on her body yet, but I decided to take a little break and clear my mind from all confusion. I made a wavy cut on all the edges of the 2mm foam, then I folded and crimpled it to get a more material look. Before painting the loincloth, I gave it a test fit on old Gollum. It's going to need a little bit more trimming, but we'll do that later. I'm going to use instant glue to apply the small strands of hair that Gollum has left on his head. The loincloth is attached to Gollum using contact cement. The contact cement is attached to the corners of the loincloth so it can attach to itself. To secure the cloth, a small amount of contact cement is applied to Gollum's lower back and the loincloth. Now I'll do the final trimming and forming of the loincloth. I'm going to use a little acrylic paint to dirty down that bright red color of his loincloth. I plan to revisit and redo a lot of my painted projects as soon as I develop more skills. But for now, what you see is what you get. This brings us to the end of this project. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your viewership and support. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, press that like button, and press the bell notification so you'll be notified when each of these new videos are uploaded.